Basement Concepts has been finishing basements in Barrie and Simcoe County for over 20 years now. They've consistently been Barrie's choice for best basement finishers, so we interviewed several of their clients to see what they thought of this company, both before they had their basements finished and then afterward. Will and Linda are a couple from Barrie who had their basement finished by Basement Concepts in 2014. So we went back in 2018 and inquired how they chose Basement Concepts, how the process was to finish their basement, and how they felt about the finished product. Here's what they had to say.
The decision was made to do our basement. We finished renovating the rest of the house. And I'd always done the work myself, having grown up in a household where that was the norm. But this project, thinking about the basement, was just a little too much to tackle with our kids getting to the age where they're running around with activities going on all the time. And so we decided it was time to consider hiring somebody to look at the basement. We were nervous about doing that because my expectations for quality were really high. And I'd heard horror stories from friends who'd hired companies to do their projects, both in terms of time, unexpected budgets attached to it, issues with the people themselves. So we were really nervous about it and picky. We took a look at several online. I made a lot of phone calls, and again, because of my background, I knew there were certain things I expected to see or hear when I talked to people, and a lot of them got tossed very quickly because it was clear that they were finding ways to cut corners and cheap it out. There was a couple that it narrowed it down to, and Steve was certainly one of them. When I talked to Steve on the phone, he said all the right things. He put a lot of attention to what's behind the walls, not just what's on the surface finish. And the product quality was there, and his expectations were there that were similar to my own. So the decision in the end was to meet with him, talk with him. We walked through the basement, which was a wreck and a disaster at the time, and talked a bit about vision and ideas to see if we were on the same page. He was very attentive to our interests and needs. He had a great balance between listening and making suggestions, and was very good in that regard. The quality of the material, his expectations were high. Or even to consider taking on the project, it had to be that kind of quality, and I really admired and appreciated that. And in the end, we decided that we were very comfortable to work with him. So we called a couple of his references who had nothing but amazing things to say about him and his professionalism. And while it was a big step for us, we were like, no, we're comfortable to trust him and see where things went. Basement Concepts did a great job of coming in with a full contract. One of the issues that I'd noticed with a lot of renovation work when you talk to other people was they gave these general vague numbers and here's kind of what we'll do, and hopefully that's good. It's sort of a handshake kind of agreement, but oftentimes when talking with friends it came out to very different understandings of what the expectations were, which the miscommunication of course creates a lot of the tensions and issues with the renovation project. Steve, again, very clear and direct. When he came in to talk with us, he had already worked through the whole process. We verbally walked through the entirety of the basement, knew exactly what our expectations were. He took great notes, and then drafted up a full contract through Basement Concepts and said, here's exactly what we'll do, how much of everything we need, here's a final total, and made it clear that any adjustments to that we'd be notified of immediately. And those changes would only come about if we decided that we wanted to upgrade in quality with anything, or if there was things that he was offering or suggesting that we decided not to use, that would adjust the budget accordingly one way or the other. So the communication from the start was very clear. We knew exactly what was coming at us. He promised us it wouldn't adjust unless we'd made changes that required a change to the budget, and that we'd be notified of it immediately so we could make a decision knowing what the final cost would be. So, for example, we wanted to upgrade the fireplace or the staircase. We made decisions that we wanted a certain grade or quality of material for it. And he came back and said, okay, not a problem. I talked with the subcontractor, and that's going to require this much more in the budget to do it. Are you comfortable with that? We can make a decision, yes or no. So It was never a surprise, and when the process was done, it was exactly what we expected it to be.
So Steve was very good at helping us solve our problems and our challenges with the space. So, for example, we had a freezer that was awkwardly placed against an angled wall, and he suggested building a nook for the freezer in the storage room, and it works perfectly.
He was really good at working with the fact that we had some preconceived ideas for the basement, so he was very attentive at listening to what it was we were looking for. But in areas where it was difficult to figure out how to position everything, dealing with things like support walls or jack posts and things like that, you can't move those. And he would find very creative ways to help us think our way around those and make them blend in well. So he had a knack for figuring out and visualizing how to finish it off. He listened very closely to the ideas and oftentimes helped to reinforce them by adding to it if there was things that he thought might work with it. But it was a great balance of respectfully working through and listening to what we were looking for, but then also being very creative and finding ways to make it happen and maximize the space and come up with a finished product that suited our needs. So it was a big step for us to be willing to allow a company to come in, to Basement Concepts to come in with a bunch of people that we didn't know or weren't familiar with. But Steve made us feel so welcome and at ease right from the get-go. He reassured us because that was a concern for us, and introduced us to the workers that were coming into the house, so we always knew who they were. He always had clear timelines, let us know who was coming in and when. Had it set up so we knew exactly how secure the place would be and made sure everybody was clear about arming the system and walking away with everything finished up at the end of each day. Excuse me. So he did a really nice job of putting us at ease. The workers that he had at the time, I think he'd indicated clearly that the newest worker on his team had been with him for like 6.5 years or so. So all of his workers he very much trusted and was confident in their ability to do the job and to do it well, and he was very comfortable in terms of trust level. So they were all really friendly and professional. I was asking questions just to see what they were doing and how they were handling things, and they were very good at explaining themselves and what the process was, and asking questions if there was things that they knew would impact on the final finished product and so on. So it was just great dialogue with all of them right from start to finish, because the subcontractors, whether it was to do the railings or whether it was to do the painting or any of that stuff, they all coordinated everything really well at all times, and Steve kind of held everything together. He was often here, and at the end of each day he'd often take time to just say, let's take a look and take a walk, I'll show you what we've been doing today, and I had a question I wanted to ask you about this, can we take a few minutes and take a look at this? If there was things that he needed me to get done, because sometimes there'd be some separate work involved. I wanted to do a lot of wiring for surround sound and things like that, for example, and he left that with me and was clear about his timelines. So he'd say, if you can get this done by Tuesday, because that's the day we're going to close up the ceilings and so on with drywall, then I knew I had a timeline to work with. I could contact other people I needed to get things done. And the communication was just excellent with him and his workers. So I never felt like I wasn't sure what was going on. I always had a very clear sense of where things were going. And he would often indicate, here's our plan for the day, here's what we're going to do, and we'll probably be here till such and such a time. Sometimes, in most days, he was still here when I got home. And so in terms of communication, it was great, because I come in the door and holler hello, and he'd come up from the basement and he'd we'd talk for a few seconds, and then he'd say, how about I show you what we've been up to today? And we'd come down the stairs and we just kind of walk through the process of what they'd been doing, and he was very patient with any questions that I had, because of course I hadn't been here, and he has a vision obviously of how it was finishing, but if there was things I wasn't sure about, I could ask him questions. He was just very approachable and clear with his explanations. So you always finish off the day knowing what had happened, where the game plan was for the next couple of days, where things were going. We kind of converse. It was a bit of a team sort of effort where, if there was things that he needed from me, I could make sure that they were ready and positioned and set up to go for the next day or whatever have you. Otherwise, he was just very clearly helping to make sure that we were comfortable and things were moving forward well. So his timelines were always set and clear. He told us how long the project should take. and outside of times where we threw him off with delays because we'd hired, you know, a group in to deal with, you know, say finishing furniture pieces or whatever for the walls. He always had a timeline in mind, and it always happened. It came through one way or the other. And if there was ever an issue where somebody should have come in on a day or whatever, it would be like a one-day off thing where he'd be like, you know, unfortunately this happened. So we did this instead today, and he's coming in tomorrow, so we're not behind on our timeline. We just adjusted, but always to make sure that things got done on time, and he handled that very, very well. He told us what the budget would be in the beginning. He said, this is how much it'll cost you to do it with these products and in this way. And any changes that came were because of things we came to him and said, you know, we'd really like to do this, you know, upgrade the fireplace in this way, or we'd like to change it up for this type of carpet. And anytime that came up, he's like, no problem, I'll check with the supplier, and he'd come back and say, to do this, it'll cost this much more. Are you comfortable with that? In some cases it was less. It would be, we don't really need you to do this. Like, we decided to have a, we'll call it a floating vanity, I guess you could say. And so we were having a company we'd work with to build that. And he's like, okay, well then we can deduct that from the budget. So we'd set aside this much for it, so that saves you this much money that you can use towards the product you're going to put in. So again, it worked either way. He was always very good at communicating, and he was very open-minded and flexible when we, you know, deviated from what would have otherwise been the plan. So I think I'd always done my own project work because I knew I could count on, you know, how the quality of the material would come out, and budgeting for that, you really just developed a sense of it as you were working through it step by step, so you had a vague sense of it. Hiring somebody else was a bit nerve-wracking. Again, friends had gone through the experience, and their budget price numbers had in some cases almost doubled, and along the way there would be accidents and issues and accusations over who was responsible to deal with it, and there was just a lot of evidence that there's a lot of bad builders out there. There's a lot of people out there that are, you know, fly-by-night. A lot of the people I contacted early on offered really good prices, but really shoddy quality material to go into it, and you know that you're going to end up with what you pay for. And when we started looking around, we realized that you get what you pay for. I think the thing that's always mattered the most to us is quality. I usually did my own work because I was raised to believe that you put in the time and energy and you make it the best you can. So to say I'm picky is a bit of an understatement. It just really matters that there's that attention to detail. And that's one of the things I often find I don't see in basic construction, and oftentimes it's, you know, builder specials thrown in there. And with Basement Concepts, one of the reasons I went with them in the first place is because in all aspects, from what's hidden to what's on the surface, he was very careful to make sure that it was clean and really well thought out. The design in the conversation was always attention to detail oriented, down to conversations about where corners would be rounded or squared out, or, you know, finishing woodwork detail, because our basement was trying to carry some elements of the historical past, and that requires a little bit more finessing with the woodwork. And in all those things, he both could do it himself and or get the right people in to get the product to where we wanted to see it in terms of quality. When he finished the design, it was everything we could ask for and more. He took a vision that you have in your head, and because he was so good at communicating right through the process, by the time it was finished, it looked just like you wanted to see it and more, because he could get those details and really make them come together. So we were thrilled with the finished product. It was absolutely wonderful.
It certainly was stress-free.